The body is the most advanced technology on the planet. We have two hearts. One is obviously the physical heart, and then the other is the sacred heart, the ethereal, energetic heart. So the physical heart is self-explanatory, but the sacred heart is about consciousness, the divine heart. What we give is what we get. But are we giving to get, or are we giving to give? And many people try to relate their giving to their convenience, meaning I will give if it's convenient for me. When we come from sacred heart, it comes back 10,000-fold. It does a lot more to assist other people, plus it does a lot more to assist us in our own creations. And when we give with sacred heart, that is divine giving. You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This is another episode in the Conversations with a Sorcerer series, and the title of this episode is Experiencing Incredible Well-Being. This episode is a recapitulation of a talk that I had with Don Xavier back on, I believe, May the 8th is what I wrote down, May the 8th of 2021. And in that conversation, we talked about healing, we talked about giving, and we talked about the sacred heart. Many of us, obviously, we know what the heart is, but we don't think about the sacred heart. And this episode is geared towards healing more than anything else and well-being, but it's grounding ourselves into divine mind, which is sacred heart. So if you'd like to learn to experience incredible state of well-being, keep listening. Okay, so we want to talk this week about experiencing incredible well-being. And what I want to talk about more than anything, as I'd mentioned in the introduction, is the sacred heart. Now, some of you might have heard that before. Many of you probably have not. And the benefit to this particular episode is for you to start experiencing profound spiritual knowing, profound spiritual growth, healing, and inner peace. And this conversation was after dinner one night, and you never know what Don Xavier is going to talk about. He'll bring a topic. I don't think I know he doesn't have anything in mind. He just goes with what he knows he needs to share. But he started talking about the Native Americans, the ancient Native Americans, where they would often have their hand over their heart. And he mentioned pictures of Lord Sananda. Now, you probably call Lord Sananda Jesus, but Lord Sananda, which is his cosmic name, many times you'll see pictures of Lord Sananda, and his heart will be almost like it's popping out of his chest. I mean, you'll see his heart kind of like, what I don't know what the word is, but it kind of like is in front of his chest, and it's got the halo around it and all these kind of things. And it has a radiance about it. And Don Xavier was talking about how that's not the biological heart that's depicted in the picture. That is the sacred heart. And many times, because I've seen that picture, when I was a kid, and many times, we interpret that, meaning that heart that we see in the picture, as our physical heart. We mainly think it's a depiction of our physical heart, but it's really, and I'll talk again about it in this episode a lot, it's really a depiction of our sacred heart. It's Christ consciousness, which is what the sacred heart is, Christ consciousness. I do want to point out here is that many times when people hear the word Christ, and I know I did for many years, we get turned off right away. Not turned off by the word Christ, but we get turned off by organized religion. And Christ consciousness is not, I emphasize, not about Christianity or organized religion. It's about divine consciousness. Something I want to mention here and this is not the episode to talk about it or go in depth, but in Christianity and many religions, organized religions, but in Christianity in particular, the Bible and all Christian dogma talks about God. And there's all these representations about God. But in Christianity, people talk about, and the entire framework of the religion talks about God as this deity, and then Christ is the son of the deity. Well, in cosmology, God is all and represents all consciousness. So from where I come from, God is not the deity, God is the consciousness, and Christ is not the air quote son of God per se, in terms of an actual father and son, but Christ is the awareness of the God consciousness in us. Again, can't go into it in this episode, but I wanted to share that with you. So the biblical narrative is a metaphor, and it's a metaphor for the consciousness and the realization of consciousness. It's the awakening of humans into the divineness of self-realization. So I'm going to leave that right there for now, but basically, the human dogma about Christianity is a metaphor for consciousness and the realization of consciousness, but it's represented as God and his son. Now, when it comes to Jesus, I suppose there was the Jesus of history, but there was also a being and physical body on the planet named Jesus, but his name was Sananda Ra, Lord Sananda. Ra was his cosmic name. So where I want to go here, talking, and what prompted this whole thing was a conversation that Don Xavier had, and that sacred heart that you might have seen in pictures of Jesus / Sananda Ra. Where Don Xavier went in this conversation is we have two hearts. And he said science has talked a lot about this in the last couple of years. And akin to this, you've heard people say recently, maybe, we have two brains. We have the brain, and then we have the gut. But the gut is itself a brain, and they talk about two brains. But the question is, what about two hearts? So the two hearts, one is obviously the physical heart, and then the other is the sacred heart, the ethereal, energetic heart. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode, is working with the ethereal, energetic heart, which is actually not even in the same location as the physical heart. It would be right above the physical heart. So the physical heart is self-explanatory, but the sacred heart is about consciousness, the divine heart. And, as we know, the biological brain and the heart work together. And in this conversation, he mentioned a couple of words, and I want to substitute one of the words because I'm not sure I heard it correctly, and I don't want to misrepresent anything. But he had mentioned in this conversation, we have neurons in the brain. And then he mentioned another word a couple of times, and again, I'm not sure that I heard it or wrote it down correctly. Even though I recorded it, I still can't make out the word, but we'll call it nerve tissue, okay? So the brain has neurons, but the heart has nerve tissue, and this nerve tissue connects the nerve tissue from the heart into the neurons in the brain, hence two brains. But this nerve tissue, though it's also physical, is also non-physical. And so the physical and the non-physical heart work together as two hearts. And he just mentioned here, I just want to say the phrase, and the reason why I wanted to just say the phrase is I may say things, I attract a lot of very gifted people to the podcast. And I could say something that candidly and quite transparently might not mean a lot to me, or I've heard it so many times I tend to literally just kind of brush over it a little bit. But people listening, they may hear it and it may hit home. It may register with a dream they had last night or a thought they had yesterday or something. So I have ancillary thoughts also from time to time. And that ancillary thought is, he said, the Sacred Heart, he said it goes into another level of the quantum. So take that as you wish. And he said the Sacred Heart connects with everything else, but comes from a different source of quantum mechanics. So what he's saying there is that the Sacred Heart does connect with everything. It does connect with your biological heart. It does connect with your body, but it goes to a different level of quantum mechanics beyond the physical heart. And he was saying when we connect the Sacred Heart with the physical heart, then magical things start to happen for us. And he just an ancillary comment he said is, he's often said that the body is the most advanced technology on the planet. And in this conversation, quote, is the heart and the body, they're an incredible creation that we are. And we carry incredible intelligence within ourselves. And when I listened to that again, I thought, you know what's so interesting in the world that we live in? We're such advanced, incredible intelligence housed in this body, but most of us literally live our lives on and in social media, and on and in the news, and on and in the 3D world, and we don't even recognize the divineness and the power that we carry within us when we learn to wake it up, for lack of better words, and we learn to connect with it. So he said, as we have two brains, and the pumping heart, meaning the physical heart, that takes care of the whole intelligence of the whole being. Because without the physical heart, then there wouldn't be any heart, whether it be ethereal or physical, that would have any point of reference, meaning the physical body to be housed in, or for the physical body to be a medium for it. And he said the two brains working together and the two hearts working together, this is the totality and beyond of the physical organism. And he said, this is his phrase, what people have to understand. When things come, and here's the point of the episode, when things come from the divine heart, it's not the same thing as coming from the heart. And as I was listening to this episode, thinking about how to convey this to you, I'm thinking, how the hell do how do I convey that? And I'll do the best that I can. And at the very least, hopefully you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about so that you can create that incredible state of well-being that I talked about in the introduction. And the conversation went into giving and Ayni. I've talked about Ayni before, A-Y-N-I. Ayni is Incan for the reciprocity of life. And Don Xavier said that when things come from the divine heart, it's not the same as coming from the heart. And he said what we don't understand is what we receive when we give in the right way. Let me rephrase that, because that's his literal quote. But what he's saying is that we don't understand that giving is one thing, but giving through divine heart, the Sacred Heart, that's a whole nother ball of wax. I'm gonna paraphrase this. It's a lot more powerful energy. It does a lot more to assist other people, plus it does a lot more to assist us in our own creations. And he talked about the example of him. He doesn't charge. Now, I'm sure I've told you that before in many different places and many different episodes. Don Xavier doesn't charge. He's not allowed to charge. And he'll charge, I do want to back up here and contradict myself. He'll charge for the first appointment with him, which I think is a couple of hours long and maybe a couple of $100. And after that, he'll work with people. I've seen him work with people 10, 15 years, and he never will ask them for money, and he's not allowed to charge them. And there are many times, even I've like, Don, I need to make an offering for XYZ. I need to make an Ayni offering, a love offering. You help me with ABC, whatever it is. And generally, even when I say that, he will never even acknowledge me making that statement. He just doesn't go there. He never works from, oh, okay, I did something for you, or I did something to help someone, but something has to come back to me. He never, ever, ever goes there. But where he's going in this conversation, he said that most people don't understand Ayni, A-Y-N-I. And you can look it up online. Ayni is literally, as I said, it's an Incan phrase. It's an ancient Incan phrase, meaning the reciprocity of life. The Amish, many hundreds of years ago, called it the barn building, meaning if I need a barn, the entire community comes and builds me a barn, and then you need a barn, and the entire community will come and help you build your barn. But what many of us do is we build a barn for other people, but we don't do it with that sacred reciprocity, that sacred heart. And he said that when people come from the inner heart, the sacred heart, and we all have that sacred heart in us, no matter where we are in physicality, is what he said, meaning I assume I don't know what he's meaning, but I'm going to assume whatever your incarnation might be, or wherever you might be incarnated, you come with the energy and the power of that sacred heart. And when we give with sacred heart, that is divine giving. When I'm listening to my recordings to recapitulate for you guys, there are a lot of things I have to omit out because I don't have his permission to share. But often, as I'd mentioned, he'll jump around. And many times, I'm just going to be candid, it'll take me hours to listen to a 30-minute episode to organize it in a way that I can share with you guys. And my profound intention is that it resonates in some way and makes your life even better. But in this particular conversation that, I was having with him, he was sharing about a guy that works with him, and I won't mention the guy's name. He wasn't famous or anything, but you don't know him. And he said, this guy, he said, he is a natural when it comes to sacred heart. He simply just is all heart, and he wants to give from the heart. And he went into the example of many things. He goes, many people bring me things to cook. Now, when I say cook, I don't mean cook in the kitchen. I mean spiritual tools, spiritual items. Any spiritual item that I bring into my house that I'm going to work with, I will have Don Xavier cook it. And what that means is he will basically remove any energies in that particular physical item that don't belong there. So let's say, for example, that you buy a crystal. Let's just say a quartz crystal, and we buy it from a crystal shop. What we don't recognize is that crystal has consumed the energy of every single person that's interacted with that crystal. So you walk into a crystal shop, and even people walking by crystals, the crystals are picking up their energy, their electromagnetic fields, and encoding that inside the crystals. So when I buy spiritual items, and let's say a crystal, for example, I take it over to him and he cooks it, for lack of better words, but basically he removes all these other energies. But he said many people bring things to him to be cooked, and he says, and he's not allowed to ask for anything. It's his job to serve. And I've never seen him hold a grudge or any of that, or be resentful or make a snide, nothing ever. He simply says, okay, this is what you need, because he knows that's what he's supposed to do. That is his role. And he says people don't understand the Ayni in themselves. They don't know, they don't learn. Now, sharing something, full transparency, in my early years with him, I didn't know. It's the same thing in Native American culture. When you go to an elder and you ask for guidance or healing or assistance, In Native American culture, it's customary to first give something to the healer in exchange, to exchange the energy. So we talked a bit more about Ayni in this conversation. And many people think, oh, it's just Ayni. If I give something, woohoo, okay, the universe is going to reward me and give me something back. I gave, so I get. And he said, it's not that way. Because when we give to get, we're not giving from sacred heart in us. We're giving from like biological heart, from 3D heart, 3D thinking, and we're giving with the interference of the human thought. It's not coming from the same energy as the sacred heart. He went on in this conversation and he said, many people translate Ayni to convenience. Again, I'm not tossing any stones. I've been there. And he said, many people try to relate their giving to their convenience, meaning I will give if it's convenient for me. And I'll give you the perfect metaphor. I'm going to back up a little further. I have not listened to any of his content in 20 years, literally. Tony Robbins, maybe 25 years. But I remember from many years ago, Tony said that when you can't afford to give is when you need to give. And even when I heard it, I thought, how the hell, if I can't afford to give, how am I going to give? If I've only got $10, I'm not going to give away $5. And that's what he was saying back then. And honestly, I'm not even sure he knew what he was saying when he said it or the profoundness of it. But many of us, we give in life based upon convenience. I will give XYZ, but I'll only give to an amount or give an amount that is convenient for me. So as an example, if I've got $100 to my name, well, maybe I can afford to give you $1. Now, I do want to say this doesn't mean give away what you don't have, okay? But look at this. If we say something like, I've only got 100, I'm going to use the word convenient. I've only got 100 and I'm good with 100. I can live on the 100. But if I give you $5, then that's going to put an inconvenience on me. It'll help you dramatically, but it's going to be an inconvenience on me. Therefore, I am not going to do it. I'm going to keep my 100 because I don't want to be inconvenienced. And then many times, as I said earlier, we will say to ourselves, I'll give because I'll receive. And many people, and that is the way it works, but I'm going deeper here. What we give is what we get. But are we giving to get or are we giving to give? Ponder that. Do you give to get? And you might think, well, it's an in-kind return, meaning if I give money, I'm going to get money. If I give help physically, I'm going to get help physically. No, it's not that way. The way that I look at it is that we give with an open heart without any strings whatsoever attached. And then whatever, if ever we get anything back, it's all gravy. That's great. But we can't give with the strings. And even so, the convenience thing, many times when we give, we might think, oh, okay, if I give 100, I might not get 100 back, but somebody will do something else for me over here. Somebody else will make me cookies, or somebody will, I don't know, drive me to the airport or whatever. But notice the condition, notice the convenience on the giving. And we can't have it that way. It doesn't work that way. And he said, when people approach giving in that way, they receive nothing from the quantum universal. Meaning, when we give with expectation of getting something back, we don't receive from the quantum universal. He went on in this conversation, and I've been here too, but see, I didn't know I was there when I was there, is he said, most of us live our life and we give in our life by convenience. And I remember many years ago, he had this physical metaphor, and he was typing metaphorically. And he said, not metaphorically, I don't know what the word is, as an example. he said most of us are typing and we're like me, 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 me. And then the old typewriters where you take the thing, and I forgot what side it was, left or right, you push it all the way back to the edge again, that spinning thing on the back of the typewriter, whatever it was that we had back in college and high school, if you're old enough to remember that. And he goes, then next paragraph, me, 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 me. Think about that. Think about that, because even as I say that, you hear it, but do you really hear it? And we have to give from complete non-attachment. We have to give from this sacred heart, which I'll talk about this person I was mentioning a few minutes ago in just a moment. And he said, I'm a giver, and a lot of people mistake my giving because I'm free. And many people take advantage of my giving, but it's their loss, but they think it's their gain. So I see that all the time. I see it all the time. And as I said for the third time in this conversation, I'm not tossing any stones. I've been there. But think about all the things you take from other people in life and you consume. Maybe it helps you grow. Maybe it makes you more money, whatever it might be. Do you give back to the source of that inspiration? Because if you don't, this is where the holy shit 2x4 right between the eyes comes in. Boom, right between the eyes. You're not even recognizing it, but you're a taker. And we have to be givers to get, but we have to be givers from the sacred heart. And he was saying, as I just said, that he doesn't charge. And he's helped people for decades and he doesn't charge. And many people think, I remember he and I talking one time about, again, the topic is sacred giving, not just giving from the heart, from the sacred heart, not the thinking heart, not the thinking brain. But he said, many people will ask me for help in their business, and I help them. And many people, literally, it mentioned the person. I don't know the person's name. He never mentions names. He's never malicious when he mentions it. But he's like, I helped this person make $1 million, and they sent me $1,000. And he wasn't like, oh, woe is me, I can't believe. He wasn't like any of that at all. He was using it as an example that he made this person, helped this person make millions, but they had no understanding of Ayni. And he said, if they ask me for help again, I will help them again. He goes, that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. And he goes, but it's not me not giving to them. It's divine mind. It's spirit. They have to give from sacred heart. And when they do, sacred heart gives back. But if they're giving to get and they're not even giving back, then sacred heart, I'm going to use my words, not Don Xavier's, sacred heart is going to dampen the return back to that person. So they could think, oh, okay, I'll give all this money. But it doesn't mean you're going to get all that money back if you're giving to get. So hopefully what I'm getting across here, because I feel like I'm mangling this a little bit, give from the heart and stop giving when it's convenient for you. Now, again, to contradict myself, and he's often said this, you can't give what you don't have. So if you don't have it, that's one thing. But if you have it, don't give only to the extent that it's convenient for you to give if you know that it's going to help someone else. And he said that when somebody gives with the expectation of getting something back, he goes, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work that way because it's not coming from sacred heart. And he said, quote, when we come from sacred heart, it comes back 10,000-fold. Not tenfold, but 10,000-fold. And he said, I didn't create this. I didn't create this in the universe. It's just the way the universe is. And he went on to say, and I've noticed this is true as well. He goes, I never talk to people about this. He goes, I never try to teach people that you have to do this or that. He goes, no, I am here for service. And many people take that for granted, and they don't get the rewards they could receive. Now I'm going to paraphrase the rest here, say the rest, because they don't give back to where that service came from. Okay, that right there, I read verbatim. That's what I was trying to say earlier. I want to slow down here. Think about places in your life where people provide service to you. And there are many places in life that provide service free to us that better our life, but we ignore it. We don't think anything about it. And that's what we want to pay attention to, because then we're working to a larger degree from sacred heart. And then what we put out is what we're going to come back to us, or what's going to come back to us. Now, back to this guy that I was talking about earlier. I know him pretty well. I've known him for probably a decade. And he's such a giving person. And DX said that he often wants to give Ayni for other people. And DX said, no, you cannot give Ayni for other people. He said, you do you, meaning take care of the Ayni you need to, but you don't do Ayni for other people. And this person was saying, but Don, I want to do this for others. I want to help. And Don Xavier said, no, stop. You have to understand is you cannot come from your heart, but yet giving for other people. They must come from their own heart and their own giving. That is the way that it works, and it doesn't work any other way. So everyone has to come from their own heart, no matter what it is that comes from their own heart, but it has to come from their heart and not their brain thinking, oh, okay, if I give, I'm going to get more. Or if I give, X, Y, Z is going to happen. That's coming from the brain, and heart, sacred heart, is coming from, it brings me joy. It brings me bliss to be able to serve. And he said in this conversation, and I want to give you a little technique at the end of this episode. He said in this conversation that when we give from sacred heart, that's the green emerald light. Now, that's something I've been familiar with a lot of years. I've never mentioned it on the podcast, but I'm sharing it now. And the emerald heart, the green emerald light, is the spiritual light of divine source. And he said also, you do not command sacred heart. You can command other things energetically, but you do not command sacred heart. You cannot control sacred heart. Sacred heart, and I'm going to use the word for lack of better terms, is controlled by divine mind. He went into some science here, and truthfully, I need to get more clarity on this, but I want to share it with you. And he talked about, when we were sitting there talking, if you're watching video now, if you're listening, you won't be able to see this, but he talked about how in cultures where they'll put one hand on their chest and one hand on their head, their brain, their prefrontal cortex. And he said, when we do this and we settle ourselves, we literally are starting to connect heart and brain. He said, the biggest challenge for most people is the 17-inch journey between the brain and the heart. So what he gave us in this particular exercise, those of us that were there, he says, touch your heart and your brain. Manage and slow your breathing. And then imagine your heart communicating with the rest of your body. Not your brain, but your heart communicating with the rest of your body, your entire body. Next thing he said was, is the heart communicates with all the organs. It communicates with everything. Your heart, your ethereal heart, your energetic heart, even connects with the biological heart, the heart that's pumping blood, the heart that's breathing. Now, here's the science part that perhaps you can do your own research on this. But he says we need to get to the frequency of 0.1 hertz. And that frequency is between the brain and the heart. And he said when we connect with that frequency, and I'll give you my interpretation in a moment, when we connect with that frequency, notice you have no cortisol surging through you. You have no adrenaline, and you are in a state of stillness. And that is a state of extreme well-being. This is a connection. This will throw you for a loop a little bit. It won't make sense. But this is a connection between your brain, your heart, and you. So it's kind of like the organic amalgamation of all of you, but the awareness of that connection between your brain and your heart and you. And he said, imagine your heart and these energies in the heart communicating to the brain, and the brain communicates back to the heart, and then that communicates to the rest of the body. Then he said, try to connect to the 0.1 hertz, and that is the heart of the planet. Now, as far as me telling you how to do that on this podcast, I ain't going to do it because I don't even know how to do it, but I'll tell you what I think it means, and I feel pretty confident in this sharing. So I'm not going to say, oh, here's what he said it is, but I'll share with you what I think he means, okay? When we connect the brain with the heart, and we make the connection, meaning we stop, we slow down, we get conscious, we make the connection. In that moment, we start connecting with Pacha Mama, which is Mother Earth. There, we're at 0.1 hertz. Now, what he said is, and what I've experienced, I'll share my experience. When I first started doing this, what I noticed was, at the very least, it was calming. And it felt good to do. At least I got to just decompress for a couple of minutes, touching my heart, breathing, hand over chest, and just imagining connecting my brain to my heart, and imagining that connection flowing throughout my entire body. And when I first started doing this, I noticed that it would definitely be very soothing. And the more that I did it, the more profoundness started coming through me, the more things that I started hearing, the more wisdom that I started picking up on. And life started getting a lot easier because I started letting go of so many things. And he said, in this particular exercise, you can do it as much as you want. And he said, just take a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes per day, and do this. And he goes, all that you want to do is stop everything you're doing and allow your brain and your heart to connect with you, all of you, the totality of you, your sacred heart, and Pacha Mama. And he said, with practice, you'll come to the point where you've mastered this, and then you won't even have to do the practice anymore. And this is a huge healing exercise. And you might think, well, I don't need any healing. I'm fine physically. But you know what? Most of us need emotional healing of some sort. We need to release things from our past. So you can do this anywhere, okay? Simply all you want to do to recapitulate third times, touch your heart. You can put your hand over your heart, touch your head. Imagine you're connecting your head and your brain. Imagine opening your heart, imagining this encompassing your entire body, and then imagine taking it down to the ground and then connecting with Pacha Mama, Mother Earth. And his exact words, quote, when you do this, it won't happen overnight, but you will start to bring humongous healing to yourself. And he said with consistency is you will master it. So I've given you the exercise 3 times. And again, my point is when I first started doing it, at least I recognized that it was very calming and very relaxing. And the more that I did it, the more expansion, there's the word I was looking for earlier. The more that I did it, the more expansion that I was feeling. And the more expansion that I felt, the more of everything that I could create in my life. So there's your transformational takeaway. I gave you the exercise verbatim as he gave it to us. Simply imagine your heart connecting, your brain connecting to your heart, connecting to the feeling of your sacred heart, meaning that profound heartness in you, connect it to your entire body, take it down into Mother Earth. And that's where the healing begins. Practice this each and every day. And in time, I think a short amount of time, you will start noticing changes. All right, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you over on another episode. Bye-bye.